Today, I'm excited to share with you listener stories submitted by Sam Rodriguez. He has three different encounters to share from people that he knows closely, and all of them are centered around a famous cryptid that I'm sure you're very familiar with. Stick around, it's about to get weird. This story is called The Creature at Mescalero Apache. If you're not familiar with the Mescalero Apache Reservation reports, if you do a little searching online, you'll see that the BFRO has done quite a few investigations there, and there are just numerous reports of Bigfoot activity. And this is just one of those stories. I have a cousin whose husband is a full fledged card carrying member of the Mescalero Apache Indian Reservation outside of Ruidoso, New Mexico. As such, he has the privilege of hunting and camping on the reservation. My cousin and her husband are expert marksmen, and for the most part, they can hit a moving target from roughly 50 yards away or so. That being said, they were hunting on the reservation several years ago. Situated at the base of a mountain by a small lake, they felt a very bad vibe, like they were not supposed to be there. Suddenly, they heard a loud crash of branches some 50 yards above them. Looking through the pine trees, they barely made out something large and bipedal running up the precipitous slope away from them. My cousin said that in previous times, whenever they've spotted elk or moose moving through the trees, it appeared wide and quadruped, but this time they saw that this image was very tall. They couldn't see the top part of it since it was largely obscured by pine leaves. They could barely make out bipedal locomotion ascending up the hill with lightning speed. Already feeling a bad vibe and concern for their small children at the truck, my cousin, in self preservation, fired at the image as it scaled the steep slope like it was nothing. She knew that she made a direct hit 3 times. Next, her husband fired another round at it and knew that he had made the same number of hits as did my cousin. But to their shock, this thing continued to the top until it was gone over the ridge. They both knew that they had struck it, but their instincts told them that whatever it was, one, the direct hits did not slow it down whatsoever. And two, this fact alone validated their original bad vibes, which intensified into panic mode. Immediately, they made it back to the truck, loaded their children in the back seat, and hightailed it out of there. I asked her what their motivation was for firing at it, to which she answered, "We did it to spook it out of the area so we could kill it. This thing gave off a bad vibe. We were all scared and had goosebumps, and we do not scare easily out there. We haven't had any more encounters the past few times we've been out there, but you can feel something very bad, very unsettling." When I asked her if they ever told this to the folks on the reservation, the people's reply to them was that perhaps it was a Sasquatch, while others wondered that it was something else bad. A couple of other folks suggested that maybe it was a bear, but my cousin concluded that if it was a bear, it would have growled or charged or died on the spot, even. Yet none of these situations happened. This thing, whatever it was, ascended a real steep climb at lightning speed after it was struck 6 different times. That is some very scary stuff. To us, it borders on the paranormal or the supernatural, however you want to slice it, my cousin told me. And lastly, when I asked her what she thought it was, she remarked, "We still haven't figured it out, but whatever it was, it's bad medicine." This next encounter takes place near Alpine, Texas. It was the summer of 1975. My cousin Joe Lewis was 13 years old. His cousin owns a working ranch outside of Alpine, Texas. And that summer, my cousin Joe was afforded the great opportunity of working on this ranch. It was the stuff of dreams for most any young boy. Earlier that year, the Border Patrol had swept through the area, rounding up several of the ranch hands who were in the country illegally. As such, the ranch owner feared reprisal by these individuals, since the Mexican border lies merely 3 hours' drive away from the ranch. Those deported individuals might have assumed, wrongly, that the ranch owner had blown the whistle on them. They could easily steal back into Texas, seeking retribution against the ranch property. Therefore, the ranch purchased plenty of rifles and ammunition for all of the ranch hands, including my 13-year-old cousin Joe. So that summer, Joe took to riding horseback with a rifle in tow rustling cattle, repairing fences, being in touch with the rhythms of the earth, the tokens of an idyllic pastoral interlude. One evening, as the sun was lowering itself on the horizon, the ranch hands had gathered their equipment and rifles, heading back to the ranch house a mile away. Hungry and tired, they mounted their steeds and made a mad dash. Joe was hollering at them, telling them to wait up for him. By now, they were the size of ants off in the distance. Joe was left alone to trek back home. It was a straight shot a mile away to the house, through a dry gulch which was 20 feet wide and some 5 feet tall, with mesquite brush at the top of both sides. As the horse trotted over dry branches and stones, Joe began to get a very uneasy feeling, as though he was not alone out there. Instantly, all of the desert creatures like cicadas and crickets went completely silent. The horse began stepping backwards as my cousin pulled on the reins to move forward, but the horse would not oblige. Then my cousin saw it. Looking to the left bank toward the western horizon, Joe saw the iconic silhouette of the small pointed head with no neck and the 4-foot wide shoulders. Its hair covering its body blew slightly in the evening breeze. The creature stood motionless like a statue. Eventually, it turned sideways as it continued looking at my cousin. Then it turned completely around and walked off, disappearing behind the thick mesquite brush. At that moment, the horse bolted out of there while the evening sounds of the desert creatures returned back to life. Once my cousin arrived at the ranch house, he nervously blurted out the details of his encounter at the gulch. It proved to be a decision that he regretted for the remainder of the summer. "We've worked out here all these years now, and we've never seen anything," they jeered at him. "This boy barely shows up for one summer, and already he thinks he knows everything about a ranch," they scoffed at him. Even the ranch owners seemed to disregard my cousin's story as the ravings of a young boy's wild imagination at a summer ranch. My cousin Joe never told a single person after that for the rest of his life until he confided in me a few years ago. I assured him, "Hey, Joe, I wasn't there when this happened, but I believe you. I know you well enough to know that you are not one given to flights of fancy. If you say that it happened, I believe you," I confided in him. This next encounter is called Bigfoot's Jump. I have a friend, Debbie, who has an interesting story of a Bigfoot encounter in far west Texas. Debbie is a proud grandmother who has lived a long life and has seen much in her journey. A long time ago, when Debbie was a little girl, her family had moved to Texas from the Northwest. Driving through the night, her folks were tired, so they stopped at a rest area for a little shut eye. Debbie and her sister snuggled up in a sleeping bag out on the picnic table while her folks reclined back in the vehicle only 5 feet away. At some point during the night, her senses were awakened by a foul stench. She opened her eyes only to see a monstrous face hovering above them. In the darkness, she barely made out two large eyes staring down at her with long hair gently blowing in the night breeze. She told me, "I remember that my little girl reaction was deliberately slow, simply because my eyes followed its hairy form bent over us. Finally, my brain registered what my eyes saw, and I let out a scream, which woke up my sister and my folks in the car. There was an 8-foot chain link fence not too far from the picnic area. This thing jumped over it like it was nothing. But my folks and my sister didn't see anything and thought that perhaps I had a nightmare. As a result, they made us sleep in the back seat. In the morning, when we woke up, my little girl mind marveled that right on the other side of that chain link fence was a 300-foot drop into a canyon far below," said Debbie. "Today, when I look back on that day, I wonder, did it disappear through a portal or did it just jump into that canyon?" she mused within herself. Thank you, Sam, for submitting these awesome stories. If any of you listeners have stories you'd like to share or have read on the show, send me an email at heidi@weirdwilderness.com. I'd love to hear from you.